Welcome to the PHAROS Fit podcast, where we help you to explore your capacity to move better, push further, and achieve your limitless potential through fitness, nutrition, recovery, and lifestyle. Hey guys, welcome back to the PHAROS Fit podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm back here today with Tyler Manzo. Hey Ty.
How we doing, Pete?
Good. And Alena.
Hi.
Hey Alena. Today we're going to talk about nutrition, an absolute minefield. There's so much we can talk about on nutrition. We're going to try not to get too deep into nutrition on a cellular level. We're going to try and keep it fun. We, especially me and Tyler, have a lot of experience with trying different kinds of nutrition, different kinds of diets. Some totally stupid, some kind of cool. But I think everything we've done, we've learned something from. So it'd be fun to share some of those experiences with you. Alena's here. She's got some interesting point of views on nutrition and some interesting things to say and some confusion that needs probably clearing up.
As always.
But we'll get there. So where do we start? So PHAROS Athletic Club, the way that we usually start people at the gym with an intro is a basic physical program that they're gonna commence upon and a nutritional guideline they're gonna try and stick to. Now, when you take someone who just comes to the gym and you give them a nutritional profile, you can't make it too complicated. It has to be relatively simple, depending on their levels of experience. So for some people, it's just a basic, okay, these are the calories we're going to give you. Phase one, you're just going to try and stick to the calories. Once they nail the calories, then we're going to start really trying to get them to stick to X amount of protein a day. We always believe protein is of first importance, is what it means in Greek. That's where it comes from. Do you know that, Len?
No.
Protein,
what do you mean?
Of first importance. That's what it means in Greek. That's where it comes from.
It's interesting.
Yeah, because it's the most important macronutrient.
Got it.
That's why we start with that one.
We'll get to more questions later. Carry on.
So yeah, after we've figured out the calories, we'll then figure out the protein. Once they've nailed the protein, we'll bring in the carbs and fats. So of course, as we understand it, protein is what allows our muscles to recover and grow. We get our energy from fats and carbs, and that's the distinction between the macronutrients. Again, something people sometimes get confused. If I do not consume carbs or fats, I will not have any energy. If I do not consume protein, my muscles will not recover, and I'll not be able to...
That's what people get confused by? Wait. That's what's true, right?
That's what's true.
That's the truth. Yeah.
Okay.
It's both true and what people get confused by.
Got it. Okay.
So once we have those basics down, usually that will be enough for most people, and kind of what we will always come back to, the basic guidelines of how many calories do I need a day, how much protein do I need a day, how much carbs and how much fats, relative to my goals, the work that I do in the gym, and the size I'm currently at, what I'm trying to achieve. So often what happens is people will do something like this for X amount of time, and then they're like, now I want to try this. Okay. And then we go into this huge debate about what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't work, what's healthy, what's not healthy, what's good for the environment, what's bad for the environment. And like I said, it's a complete minefield. So, Tyler.
Yes, Peter.
Let's start with you. Out of everything that you've done, and I know you've done a lot, which diet have you really learned the most from?
I think coming from a background of sports and performance, I think carbohydrates have been a huge main focus for a really long time in my life. So taking those out and trying, let's say, the ketogenic diet, taking those out and understanding different energy sources coming from fat, I've learned a lot. I'm trying to be unbiased. I'm not on keto now. I've tried everything like you say, but what I learned from the most on what is the difference between all the macronutrient breakdowns, like you were talking about, fat, proteins, and carbs, I learned the most from the ketogenic.
Yeah. And do you mean that in the sense of you were not able to perform at the same level when you were on the ketogenic diet because of the lack of glycogen, because of the lack of carbohydrates?
Yes, but I didn't stay at home and cry in my room. Right. I still had the ability to go to the gym. I still had the ability to live. But yes, my performance started to diminish when I took out carbohydrates.
Yeah. I mean, I found the same thing kind of like with the carnivore thing. Like I can perform, and I can perform at maybe like 80% of my capacity. And if I'm doing certain types of things, like if I'm just strength training, if I'm just doing bodybuilding type workouts, I'm totally fine on fats. I find that once we get into the realm of high intensity training, like CrossFit type stuff, sprint type stuff, where glycogen is traditionally the primary fuel source, I definitely cannot perform at the same level after a certain amount of time. So, once the glycogen levels get depleted, I think we both experienced a somewhat of a drop in performance.
Yeah, definitely a drop in performance. I think it also, I don't know if you experienced this, but when you recommend something like a ketogenic diet, like you said, like you should not be doing these things. You should not be doing CrossFit.
Right.
You should not be trying to sprint every single day. Like you should, cater your protocol of your workouts around what you're putting inside of your body.
Right.
So when I would do those things, like when I would do the CrossFit or do, sprint like exercises, it's not like you said, like you can do them. You can. Your performance might be a little low, but what you're also going to feel is that you're just like, you start to like really get angry, and you start to like really diminish in your like overall, you start to get a little bit of brain fog and stuff like that, because your body's basically going into this like recovery mode because you just beat it up without any fuel. And so I think that people will fight you on that. Like a lot of the ketogenic community would be like, no, that's not right. Ketones work the same way as carbs. And it's just like, I don't know if that's the right
I
thing.
have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
One, when you say glycogen levels, you mean carbs?
Correct.
Okay. And two, Tyler, which diet made you stay home and cry in your room?
I did do a diet. It's one of the older diets, and it is called the potato diet. That was.
Could you care to explain?
I will. I was going to save this one for a little later, but let's dive right into it. The potato diet is it's something that I ran across on Joe Rogan's podcast. I forget the actual person he had on talking about it, but it's a very old diet, dating back to like the 1800s. So it's probably not the smartest diet in the world, but what it does is it actually mentally gives you a little bit more of a connection with food. And the reason why is it does. I know it sounds hilarious that all you're eating.
Because you're just eating potatoes.
It gives you more of this like mental connection with food in the way that like what is hunger and what actually is food to you.
Got it.
So let me put it to you this way. I give you a bag of potato chips and I give you a plain baked potato. Like, which one are you going to choose right off the bat?
The chips.
The chips. Okay. Because it adds a variety to your like brain basically. And what it does is it feels like it's more satiating. It feels like you could eat it whether you were starving or you were already full. So if I were to like basically feed you and I'm like, all right, you're like, listen, I've already had enough food. I'm good to go. Like, I'm not hungry anymore. And I would have put that same kind of plate of the potato chips and the potato in front of you, you would probably still have the potato. Maybe you have one because you just want to taste it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on the potato diet, like you can only have a potato. You can only have a baked potato or a steamed potato or any kind of potato, but just can't have any salt, can't have anything with it.
How many potatoes do you eat a day on a potato diet?
You can have as many as you want, but the thing is, and what I'm trying to get at is that you're only going to have as much that basically turns off that hunger symbol. So it gives you this kind of break in calories to where you're like, oh, okay, like I'm satiated, I'm good. I don't want any more fucking potatoes. Like, just don't give me any more potatoes. So it lowers, it's this dramatic lowering of your caloric intake. Whereas if you were to give somebody this kind of calorie breakdown, there's a tendency, meaning like what we do at PHAROS, let's say I give you this 2,000 calorie breakdown. there's a tendency to actually, okay, well, maybe I did, 2,500 on accident that day. Just because you had that bag of potato chips and you had that extra little calories and you didn't think that it was going to add in, or you didn't know, because even though you were hungry, you still wanted to grab it because you wanted to taste it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We should point out that Tyler is not sponsored by any kind of potato company.
That we know of.
I'm still looking for one.
How long did you do that for?
I did it for a week.
Just a week?
Just a week. By the end of the week, I knew what it was all about. Like what I was talking about is like your relationship between hunger and food.
He did it for all of us, guys.
Did it for the people.
Yeah.
And it's interesting actually, because that kind of segues us into intermittent fasting when you talk about, your relationship to food and how food tastes. We are living in a society, of course, where food is available all the time. You can go to the convenience store, you can get whatever you want, whenever you want. And we often forget like what food really tastes like and what appetite is. And, we eat because we can eat and not necessarily because we need to eat. And I know you've done intermittent fasting. I've done intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. Elena does, what do we call it? Intermittent fasting, pescatarianism.
By mistake?
By chance.
By chance. And I've done intermittent fasting a bunch of times with great success. And, the typical kind of, 16-hour fast, 8-hour window. And I've leaned out very quickly on it. I've found my relationship with food has been better on it. My appetite, my relationship with food, as in how food tastes, has improved. My insulin sensitivity has improved. It's a lot easier for me to drop calories if I want to do that when I'm intermittent fasting. I definitely, in terms of like energy balance throughout the day, which was actually, I didn't mention this, but similar with the carnivore stuff.
Carnivore? Is that what you're
diet,
saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, similar to the keto thing, but it's more based in just steak as opposed to like more higher protein, lower fats, basically. But still very little glycogen. I was on less than 30 grams of carbs a day.
Okay.
But when you do that, when you do eliminate any sugar, you don't get the same kind of insulin spikes throughout the day. So your energy doesn't like rise and drop. That when you have sugar, your energy soars and then drops off the cliff.
Which has a direct correlation to hunger signal in your body as well. Yeah.
So I was much more stabilized on the carnivore, same as I was much more stabilized when I was intermittent fasting. And I also found performance-wise, like intermittent fasting, I didn't really see a decline in performance. I did see ultimately I lose too much weight because I think it's partly because of my job and what I do. Like I need a lot of calories to get through it. And I think if I when I intermittent fast and try and keep up with my job and everything, I miss meals and can't get things in when I need to get them in, and then suddenly, you're not eating. I'm in too much of a deficit all the time.
Yeah.
But I have used it on many clients, and it's been very successful at improving their body fat percentage, and again their relationship with food. I think it's a good thing to do from time to time, because it allows you to kind of a reset, like a digestive reset. An insulin sensitivity reset.
Yeah, it's the big reset button.
So wait, body. So back up. So you start eating what, at 11, 12?
Well, you can do different windows.
Okay.
I usually used to eat at 12 and finish at 8. Yeah, and then fast through to 8 fast through to 12 the next day. And typically you're still given you still need to get this amount of calories and these are your macros, but you're eating everything within a specific window. Yeah, so you're allowing your digestive tract to rest. And it's
tough.
Yeah.
And why do you say that's tough?
Because I have a hard time meeting enough calories as it is with 24 hours. That to think about it in just the window of 12 to 8, and to get I think intermittent fasting would be easier, or something that would seem doable to me if I was okay, I'm only going to eat between 12 and 8, but I am eating a lunch and a dinner.
Well, this is why this diet would not be for you specifically, because you're an undereater, not an overeater. Your problem is you forget to eat, and then then
I eat a large
one meal. Yeah. So even without knowing it, you are kind of intermittent fasting, like we said, unintentionally.
Right.
But if we were to give you restrictions, why would we be giving you restrictions? Because the problem is for you already undereat.
Well, the insulin level thing I think is interesting. Like, because you have more energy when you intermittent fast.
Right.
And that I think is something a lot of people.
Yeah, the thing about what he mentioned about the insulin like sensitivity is that if you're, I kind of use the metaphor of like a gas tank, right? If you're continuously filling up the gas tank with, let's say, glycogen, and meaning like a carbohydrate of sense.
Why
like
do you
go
guys
to the
like
coffee
to say
shop,
glycogen over carbohydrate?
Because when it goes inside the body, it gets stored as glycogen in your muscles and your liver. So you eat your carbs, you go to your coffee shop in the morning and you get your cup of coffee, and you always get your croissant, right? And you get that carb, you eat it right around, let's say 9 o'clock in the morning, you go and you get that. Right around 12, since you ate something that was necessarily a carbohydrate, you get this big kind of insulin spike in the morning at 9 a.m. What happens is that spike will then have to go down like a roller coaster. Not necessarily it's going to go down super fast, but if you've been eating a lot of carbohydrates all the time in your life, it will start to go into this kind of super big high and then really big low. With that lull, you get really hungry. So you have a tendency to overeat more when you're doing that. So let's say you take the time restricted eating method, whether that be a 12 and 12 or 16-8 or anything like that, you're giving your body time to use that stored energy from those carbs that you are eating inside that window to deplete. And when you do that, let's say when you do break your fast and you eat the food, it has a less of a big spike and actually a smaller lull. It'll balance out. So it's what people are talking about when they say my blood sugar, like when you get hangry, you know what I mean? And they're like, oh, my blood sugar is just too low and I need to eat. That kind of depletes when you do intermittent fasting. Yeah. You have a better relationship with insulin inside your body.
And I think it's an interesting segue into the reason most people aren't overweight, no matter what anybody says, is because most people have too much sugar. Most people have too much carbohydrate in the modern diet. Yeah. And everything kind of comes back to that. So it's a way of, controlling that, controlling your, glycogen consumption, your carbohydrate consumption, your sugar consumption, a way of, becoming more insulin sensitive, not feeling like you need to rely on that constant carbohydrate intake to keep your energy levels where you need to keep them, and to kind of like be more stable throughout the day. I think a lot of people, like, they just reach for carbohydrates all the time because they think they need energy from it. It's like, I need energy, I feel low, I feel tired, carbs. And before they know it, they're 300 grams of carbs down and they're going to gain weight.
And especially with the quick carbohydrates that and I'm not saying that everybody's going to McDonald's, but that you see in this modern day society, it is a lot of like these dense carbohydrates, but it's these carbohydrates combined with fat as well. Yeah. Because like, I'll play devil's advocate. There's a lot of people out there that I know, especially inside of our gym, that are like, well, I eat a lot of carbs. I'm like, well, what does your fat look like? And they're like, oh, I eat like 10 grams of fat. I'm like, what are you cooking with water? I mean, it's one of those things when you're combining two energy sources, or you're going to McDonald's and you're having this food that's high in carbs and as well as high in fat, that you get this overconsumption of energy, and then you become, you start to put on the pounds. Was that a lot, Alena? I knew this was gonna get deep.
No, it is a lot. It is a lot for people to think about. I feel
like because there's different things. It's like it's understanding the caloric value of macronutrients. So when I have protein, I know it's 4 calories per gram. When it's carbohydrates,
you could speak just a little bit slower when you say those things. Protein.
So if I have protein, it's 4 calories per gram.
Per gram, got it.
Okay. If it's carbohydrates, it's 4 calories per gram. If it's fat, it's 9 calories per gram. So fat gets a bad name because it's more calorically dense.
Love fat.
But hormonally, it's really the sugar that causes problems. That said, too much of anything, if you're taking in too many calories, no matter what it's from, you're going to gain too much weight. Again, that said, it's hard to eat too much protein because it's very satiating, it's very filling. It's easy to eat a ton of carbohydrates because it's moreish. You
Yeah.
can just chow it down, especially when it's combined with fat, like Tyler was saying, like fat and carbs together, like a big bag of fries.
Right.
The good
Well,
stuff.
like-
the real good stuff.
Real good stuff.
I had some of those last night.
Poutine, that's the good stuff.
Yeah. I always thought, I mean, we've talked about this really briefly prior, but like I always thought like you put butter on bread because it's gonna fill you. Like, I mean, that's a terrible example for this nutrition episode, but like you put butter on bread because that's gonna like keep you full for longer than if you just ate bread by itself.
No.
What do you guys think about that?
I would not advise that.
I would say that's like does your mom tell you that? It's like an old mom thing to be
Yeah, I
like,
think
you need
it's
to
like-
butter your bread so it makes you fills you up. When you do that,
Just stay away from the butter and the bread is probably
that's a good kind of segue. Let's talk about that. So usually what happens is when you do that, let's say you butter up your bread. Your first source of energy that your body likes to use is carbohydrates. It likes to use glycogen inside your body to run functions like, you just staying alive. But it doesn't have to. So that's where the whole ketogenic diet comes into play. But to talk about what happens when you do eat butter and bread is that your body will usually use that like carbohydrate first, and then it will store everything else it needs to. So now you just put in a very caloric dense food inside of your body. So you're going to store the fat calories usually more than you would by just eating carbs. And that's kind of like, and that's what the bodybuilding diet kind of is like a higher carb, low fat, protein on point diet. Does that make sense?
Cool.
Yeah.
In the most
Just eat bread.
in the most basic in the most basic times,
Yeah.
I would say with every meal you need to think about where your protein source is coming from. Like very, very rarely would I eat like carbs and fats on their own. It's usually either a protein and a fat or a protein and a carb. So with every meal of first importance, remember that Greek
Yeah.
thing?
First importance.
Of
Yeah,
first importance is protein.
But a Mediterranean diet is heavy in the
protein,
fat.
Yeah, high in fat and high in protein.
Yeah.
And it's usually lower in carbs, believe it or not.
There you go.
Medi diet. No, but I think what Peter was, just talking about is that, and I think that is kind of the more of the wave of the future where we're going in nutrition, because prior to that, when the ketogenic diet happened and this big boom happened, it was like, you're either no carb or you're all carb or you're no fat or you're all fat. And what we really need to be focusing on, and to tie this all back in, is what is protein, what is fat, and what are carbs, and understand those three macronutrients, and then specify your meal like he was just talking about around that. So like always having your protein of first importance, and then having fat with that, or having your carbs if prior to that if you've worked out or anything like that. So knowing and understanding the macronutrients and knowing what you're eating or knowing what you're putting in your body, I think is a big important thing.
Yeah, and I think but we'll talk about nutrition timing on another podcast. But for the purpose of this podcast and kind of going back to the basics, once you have your protein source, you're really thinking about focusing on nutritionally dense foods. What I mean by that is when you eat quality protein, whether it's quality steak or quality chicken, whatever it is, you're making sure that's coming from a good source and that it is nutritionally dense, right? We're eating too much food that is not nutritionally dense, that's either man-made or that's poorly sourced, that's just like, it's just meant to kind of like fill you up, but doesn't contain anything your body can actually use meaningfully. So, I mean, it's funny right now because, you have the keto diet and you have all these kind of like man-made keto products, which it's, and to make the argument, vegan does the same thing. You have keto and you have vegan, and they're both making these products that are man-made products and saying, oh, it's vegan because there's no meat in it, or it's keto because it's got this amount of fat and it's got very little carbs in it. but it's chemicals. It's chemically made stuff that might fit within the bracket of keto and vegan, but it's not eating real food. It's not eating natural food. And for most people, if they can just get back to eating real food and focusing on protein and good sources of carbohydrates and good sources of fat, that will be enough to get them to a good place hormonally, a good place in terms of calories, and it will stop them overeating, because if you're eating real food, it is satiating. If you're eating junk food, it's not satiating, it's moreish. It makes you want to eat more of it. So it's like just get back to the basics of eating real food.
I was gonna ask, without like saying like a brand name or anything, but what do you, when you say like a keto product, like what does that look like? That's
so you can go into any supermarket or any decent supermarket now, and you can buy like keto pancakes or keto waffles or keto chips, or all of these man-made foods that don't exist in nature. They're just like, we create them because they fit in the bracket of keto, or like I said, they fit in the bracket of veganism, but we made them. So they don't exist in nature. Got it. Whereas like, it's interesting again with the way these things go, like the paleo diet, which was kind of like massive in the early 2000s, was kind of returned to like, eat real food. Stop fucking around with all this like man-made stuff, just eat real food. And then that evolved into, you could buy all these paleo products that were like, contain paleo type foods, but they were actually like paleo cookies and paleo this and paleo that. And it's kind of like, well, now you've gone away from what your initial intention was. And all of these diets go through the same thing, because food is a business, right? We're trying to make money off food. So it's like, let's create all these different products that fit in these different brackets for all these different people, so that they can stick to their principles of, I'm a vegan, I eat vegan food. Well, you're eating a chemically made product that was made in a lab that fits within your bracket of veganism, but it's not good for you. The body doesn't know how to process it. It can't draw anything meaningful from it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a client the other day talk to me, and like, this was a big one, is that he went to a butcher, and then he was like, "Whoa, well, that was like really expensive." And I was like, "Well, yes, it was, because you got good quality meats." But then I was like, "But then you got to go to the grocery store and get your just fruits and vegetables." And then he looked at me, and I was like, "Yeah, there's only two things that you really need. There's your butcher, and then you need to fill everything else with good quality vegetables, good quality fruit." And that's it. All the other aisles inside of your grocery stores, you don't really need to walk through.
What about grains?
Good question. I don't know if we have enough time for the grain conversation.
We'll have an episode on grains.
We'll have an episode on grains. And but the necessary food, we're talking about the straight up necessities of life to just have a good quality life, like Peter said, hormonally and just health balance. You need to be eating good quality meats, good quality vegetables, and moderate fruit.
Anything else, Alena, you want to add before we wrap this one up?
I mean, I feel like it could go on.
It could go on forever. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about, but like I said, I just want, from this podcast, I just want people to like understand the basics of what can help them improve their diet. Thinking about, yes, calories definitely matter. Daily caloric limits have to be in place. Once you establish that, you're thinking about every plate. I'm going to start with protein. What's my protein source? And then I'm going to build the rest of my plate around my protein source. And then from there, it's just tinkering. But always go back to the basics. Good quality foods from good sources that keep you within your caloric limit, that don't make you feel like shit.
Yeah.
That was good.
We're going to have for dinner.
What am I going to have for dinner? I don't know.
Fish?
That'll be probably. I mean, I actually have more questions, but I'm gonna hold them.
Maybe we do an episode 2.
Yeah.
We'll do part 2 soon.
Yeah. There's more to know.
Okay, guys, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. You can find us for more information at PHAROS Echo Park on Instagram. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. Leave a review, share with your friends, all that good stuff. If you're in the area, come and see us at 1316 Glendale Boulevard. Always great to see you guys. We'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye.